If you look at a map of the ancient world during the 1st century AD, your attention is immediately drawn to the giants of the era. In the west stood the mighty Roman Empire, a vast Mediterranean superpower built on military discipline, taxation, and the relentless integration of conquered peoples. In the Far East ruled the powerful Han Dynasty of China, a centralized bureaucratic empire supported by enormous agricultural production and a huge population. Between them stretched another formidable power, the Parthian Empire, dominating the Iranian plateau and the plains of Mesopotamia while acting as Rome's chief rival. But hidden between these giants in a rugged world of mountains, valleys, and narrow passes, across what is today Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Central Asia, another empire quietly rose. An empire that followed a completely different path to power. This was the Kushan Empire, and its story forces us to rethink a basic assumption about how empires are built. Most empires grow from a powerful core. A state accumulates population, it develops agriculture, it gathers wealth and resources. Then it builds armies and expands outward. But the Kushans did not start this way. They did not possess a massive population. They did not control vast fertile lands. And they did not begin with immense natural resources. Instead, the Kushans built their power on something else entirely. They mastered geography. Because in geopolitics, true power does not always belong to the empire that produces the most goods. Sometimes it belongs to the state that controls the roads everyone else must travel. And the Kushans understood this better than almost anyone in the ancient world. The story of the Kushans does not begin in South Asia. It begins thousands of kilometers away, deep in the harsh steppes of eastern Eurasia, near the modern borders of western China and Mongolia. In the early 2nd century BCE, this region, including the Tarim Basin and the Gansu corridor, was home to a powerful nomadic confederation known as the Yuezhi. The Yuezhi people were steppe nomads. They did not build walled cities. They did not cultivate permanent farmland. Their lives revolved around migration, following herds of horses, sheep, and cattle across the grasslands. Mobility meant survival. Because of this lifestyle, the Yuezhi became exceptional horsemen and deadly archers. For a time, they dominated the eastern steppe and grew wealthy through trade with Chinese agricultural societies, exchanging horses and jade. But the politics of the steppe are brutal. Power there is rarely permanent. By 170 BCE, a rival nomadic power emerged in the north, the fearsome Xiongnu Confederation. Under a brilliant and ruthless leader named Modu Xiongnu, the Xiongnu united the steppe tribes and began aggressively expanding their territory. Soon, the Xiongnu and the Yuezhi collided. The result was catastrophic. Over the course of a decade, the Yuezhi suffered devastating defeats. Their lands were seized, their people scattered. Then came the final humiliation. Around 162 BCE, the Xiongnu defeated the Yuezhi king and, according to Chinese chronicles, turned his skull into a drinking cup. It was a brutal message. The Yuezhi were finished, or so it seemed. This disaster shattered the Yuezhi Confederation. One small group fled south toward the Tibetan plateau, becoming known as the Lesser Yuezhi. But the majority, the Greater Yuezhi, made a different decision. They packed up everything, their families, their livestock, their tents, and they began one of the most dramatic migrations in ancient history. Hundreds of thousands of people began moving westward across Central Asia. This was not a planned conquest. It was a desperate search for a new homeland. As the Yuezhi moved west, they acted like a geopolitical wrecking ball. The steppe world is like a crowded billiard table. When one massive group moves, everything in its path gets displaced. First, the Yuezhi entered the Indus River valley and pushed out another nomadic group called the Kushan. When they pushed further southwest, there they collided with the Sakas, known today as the Scythians. The Sakas were forced out of their ancestral grazing lands and pushed southward, eventually into South Asia. For decades, the Yuezhi wandered across Central Asia. They fought for pasture lands, they endured harsh winters, and they slowly adapted to new environments. Then, around 135 BCE, they reached a region that would change their destiny forever. The Yuezhi arrived in Bactria, located in modern northern Afghanistan between the Hindu Kush mountains and the Indus River. For the exhausted nomads, Bactria was paradise. It was fertile, it was irrigated, and it was full of wealthy cities. But Bactria was also culturally unique. A century earlier, Alexander the Great had conquered the region, leaving behind Greek settlers and administrators. The result was the fascinating Greco-Bactrian kingdom, a blend of Hellenistic culture, Persian governance, and Central Asian influences. When the Yuezhi arrived, this kingdom was already weakening. The nomads swept through the region and took control, but instead of simply looting the cities and returning to nomadic life, the Yuezhi did something remarkable. They stopped running. They looked at the mountains, the rivers, and the cities of Bactria and decided to stay. The Yuezhi quickly realized something important. Bactria offered what the open steppe never could: security. The steppe is impossible to defend. Enemies can attack from any direction, but Bactria was protected by natural fortresses. To the north stretched the vast grasslands of Central Asia. To the east rose the towering mountains of the Pamir Mountains and the Karakoram Range, forming nearly impenetrable barriers. To the west lay the territory of the powerful Parthian Empire, but the real opportunity lay to the south, the gateway to South Asia. Crossing the Hindu Kush mountains led to the Kabul Valley. From there, mountain passes such as the famous Khyber Pass opened into the fertile plains of Gandhara, the region around modern Peshawar. Following through this land was one of Asia's great rivers, the Indus River. The Indus was not just a river, it was a superhighway. It connected the plains of South Asia to the Arabian Sea, opening maritime trade routes to the Roman world, East Africa, and the Persian Gulf. Meanwhile, moving east from the Indus led into the immense agricultural wealth of South Asia, famous for spices, cotton, textiles, and precious stones. The Yuezhi now sat at the intersection of the ancient world. But geography alone does not create an empire. For more than a century after arriving in Bactria, the Yuezhi remained politically divided. They split into 5 chiefdoms, known as Yabdus. Gradually, they began absorbing local culture. They adopted elements of Greek writing. They borrowed administrative systems, and they transitioned from nomadic herders to settled rulers. Yet something was missing, a leader who could unite them, and that leader appeared in the middle of the 1st century AD. His name was Kujula Kadphises. Kujula was the chief of the Yuezhi tribes, the Kushans, but he was not satisfied ruling a small portion of a fractured confederation. Through diplomacy, alliances, and war, Kujula defeated the other 4 Yuezhi chiefs. One by one, he eliminated his rivals. And for the first time, the tribes were united. The Yuezhi confederation disappeared. In its place emerged a new state, the Kushan Empire. With Bactria secure, Kujula looked south. He knew that controlling farmlands was not enough. To build a great empire, he needed control over trade routes. So, Kushan armies crossed the snow-covered passes of the Hindu Kush. They captured the Kabul Valley, then they pushed further southeast into Gandhara and the Indus Basin. This was not a simple raid. It was a strategic move. By capturing the Peshawar Basin and the upper Indus, the Kushans seized control of the most important commercial corridors in Eurasia. At that moment, the world economy was already deeply connected. China's Han Dynasty was producing vast quantities of silk, a luxury coveted by Roman elites. The Roman Empire paid for this silk with gold and silver. Meanwhile, South Asia exported spices, gems, and cotton textiles. But trade between these regions was dangerous. Routes were long, terrain was hostile, bandits and petty warlords constantly demanded bribes. Kujula saw the opportunity. The Kushans positioned themselves as protectors of trade. They unified the mountain passes, river valleys, and caravan routes under one strong authority. They pacified the roads, monetizing geography. For merchants traveling between China, South Asia, and the Mediterranean world, passing through Kushan territory became the safest option. Yes, the Kushans collected taxes, they charged tolls, but merchants were willing to pay. A single predictable tax was far better than facing dozens of extortions along the road. The Kushans had done something remarkable. They monetized geography. They turned the valleys of Gandhara, the passes of the Hindu Kush, and the Indus corridor into the central bridge of Eurasian commerce. The early Kushans proved something profound. A nation's strength does not always depend on what it produces. Sometimes, power lies in controlling where goods must travel. By dominating this choke point between Central Asia, South Asia, and the wider world, the Kushans linked the economies of Rome, China, and India. They transformed a rugged frontier into one of the most prosperous crossroads of the ancient world. And in doing so, they demonstrated a timeless truth of geopolitics. In the great game of empires, geography is destiny.